Welcome to another special UX talk by Dubsec in Design Buddies. Today we have with us Amy Durocher, a senior product manager at Adobe on the Photoshop team. She's been at Adobe since the last 27 years. And during her time there, she's transitioned from being a senior quality engineer to becoming a senior user experience designer to now being a senior product manager. And during her time there, she's seen the company evolve, and she's had a chance to work on quite a few great Adobe products, all the way from Adobe Photoshop to Adobe Bridge to Adobe Muse to Adobe Experience Manager. These are the same very tools that are used by millions of designers and creators worldwide to create all the stunning visual graphics that you see every day, everywhere around you. Now, she is here today to give a talk on product management for UX designers. Now, I know many of you who are tuning in are definitely familiar with maybe UX design, but maybe a little bit curious about product management and what it's like. Now, I'm going to promise you that this is the talk you want to be watching, because Amy has been a UX designer and she is giving her perspective on what product management is per se from a UX designer's perspective. It's filled with industry nuggets from her time at Adobe, so you definitely do want to watch it. You'll be gaining a lot of insights, a lot of tips. You may even learn a little bit about frameworks you could be using in your day-to-day UX process. So you definitely do want to watch it. And if you're new here, I'd like to welcome you. We are Dubsec. We are the largest tech community at the University of Washington. We've been hosting workshops and talks and hackathons for UX designers, data scientists, software engineers, as well as product managers since the last 7 years. And we upload all of our event recordings onto YouTube, so you do subscribe. And if you want to attend these events live, just simply follow us on Instagram at DubsecUW or join our Discord server. Now let's go ahead and get started.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amy Durocher. I'm super excited to be here today. I love any opportunity to talk about product management and UX. It's one of my favorite topics to talk about. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about what is PM, what kind of skills do you need to get a PM kind of job, different types of PM specializations, my journey from design, actually quality design to PM, product management, and how I use design UX almost every single day in my job. And I think a lot of designers will find it inspiring, like, hey, I could do that too. And I'll touch a little bit about the design org at Adobe, who's the design teams I work with. And I want to focus on two areas of skill development that I feel like really differentiates designers. So I get a lot of resumes across my desk. And if I see these two skills, I definitely pay attention a bit because they're super important skills. So let me get down to the next slide. So a little bit about me. I live in San Diego, but I'm from Seattle. I have worked at Adobe 26 years, and I know it sounds crazy, but it's gone by super fast. I've had 3 kind of interesting, large career shifts over these 26 years. And currently I'm a senior PM on the Photoshop desktop team. I am a working designer and artist. I use Adobe and also Adobe products and some other creative tools I have for 20 some years. So I consider myself pretty expert at many of the programs. And I love everything about design, architecture, interior design, textile design, pattern designs, you name it. I love it. And I have a couple of just small examples of like graphic design things I create. I used to own a grading card company, and I do a lot of painting. So try to not waste all my design skills at work and try to do something in my free time. So a little bit about my education. So you probably gathered if I've worked at Adobe 26 years, I'm older. So I'm 52. So when I started, I was in my 20s, and I went to Washington State and I got a BSA in 1994. And at that time, design was very print oriented. So people that were graduating at that time would typically work at a magazine or work in a print shop. And I just didn't want to do that. I thought I could do more, and I just wanted to aim a little bit higher. So the following fall, I jumped right into an MBA. And I have a little frowny face there because it was the right thing at the wrong time. which happens a lot in life. I finished the year and did a little bit more in the summer, but it just wasn't an awesome fit. I'd already done 5 years for the BFA, and I was like, oh man, this is like a slog. But I got really lucky. One of my mentors from the finance department today, we're starting a new program. So it's in visual communications. It mixes computers with old school print design and typography. You'd be a really good fit. I applied, I got in. And I did that for the next 2 years. While I was working on my MFA, I taught graphic design to undergrads, which I absolutely love. And I also worked at the Center for Teaching and Learning. And that was very amazing because it was funded by Paul Allen, partially. And we had a lot of Microsoft and Adobe executives come through and check out what we were working on. So I got to meet some important people. And one of them who worked at Adobe said, you should apply. We're hiring a whole bunch of people, college hires. I applied 2 weeks after graduation. I'm working at Adobe. So it was crazy. So I think that the key kind of to this is, this might be like, whoa, this is crazy, but this is what the landscape of software and technology looked like when I graduated. These crusty old Macs, Photoshop 2, Windows 3, and the internet was 3 years old. And I'm serious. This is what we had back then. I mentioned that because I had big dreams. I'm going to be a designer. I'm going to work in a software company. When I joined Adobe and I worked on the Photoshop team, that organization at that time, in my opinion, extremely engineering driven. There was one designer. She was an interior designer. And she was like, yeah, put that thing there, do this, make it look like that. Design really wasn't, experience design was not a discipline. So when I got hired, they offered me like 3 different types of roles, but none of them were in design. And I took what I could get. So that was quality assurance. I tested the type tool. I tested adjustment layers and a few other features that are already gone. But now that I'm back on the Photoshop team 25 years later, I'm still testing and working and developing the same features, which is really ironic. So I put this here just because look at how far we've come in technology and design, and especially working on Photoshop with that 25-year gap. It's like incredible. We've made huge strides. So it's very cool to see. So I'll jump into a little bit of the career timelines, and I make it look oh so neat and tidy. But I'll show you in the next slide it wasn't. So you can see from 97 to 2007, I was stuck in that quality assurance, quality manager kind of role. That's a long time to be stuck in a place that you're like, I'm a designer, I want to design, I want to do more. Luckily, in 2007, I got an opportunity. And it was mostly because I'd really pushed. I kept networking with people, volunteering on teams, understanding all the design tools and keeping up with things. An engineering team took a chance on me with no practical on-the-job experience in design. So you have all the fundamentals and all the classes that you can take about design, but I didn't have work experience. So I spent the next 9 years learning. And towards the end here, where we have the circle thing, is where I started doing a little more. And I'll dive into this a little bit later. But this is where I started doing the design work and thinking about what could we add? What could we do that would help sell this thing? How could we design this so that we know that it's going to last for 10 years and we're going to make X dollars? And I think that was a turning point for me I like this. I think I could do this and more on the product side. So I'll talk a little bit more about how I actually made that shift, but it was very right place, right time. And the other thing I want to mention is that timeline looks amazing, right? But that's crap. It was like this. And I want people to know that anyone that shows you this is full of bullshit, because this is the reality. There's left turns, right turns. I worked on projects that got canceled, reorgs. I've had 2 children. I've moved across the country twice. Stuff happens. Sometimes you take jobs or you get moved to something you don't like. I make the most of it. And here I am today. So in retrospect, they were all good things. But just keep in mind, if you're out there hunting for a job in this job market, it's okay. There's a place for you. And I keep telling people that because it can be a little scary and there is a lot of competition, but there's a place for you. So I talk to a lot of people and I feel the fear a little bit, but people are getting jobs. So don't stress. It's going to happen. Okay. So now I'm going to kind of transition into product management. So I'm sure all you guys know what product management is, but in case you don't, so it's a leadership role. And I'm talking specifically at Adobe. I've only worked at Adobe. Could be different Google or any other companies. At Adobe, it's a leadership role. Basically, you take an idea and you just try to get it out to customers. That's the bottom line. It's really simple. There's a lot of stuff in between, but basically it's these three pillars that really, they work together and you can't have one stand on its own. It won't work. You take business fundamentals, you talk to customers, what they want, research it, test it, and then you all glue it together with the technology. I like to think of myself in the middle as an orchestrator between all of these different business functions to deliver something. Sometimes I have a great idea. I pitch it to my boss. You say, yep, this is a good idea. We can sell a whole bunch more Photoshop. Let's do it. Sometimes I come to work and he's like, I need to deliver this by March. I'm like, okay. Or sometimes it's not even like something that a customer will see. We need to make this change for this technology, blah, blah, blah. So I never know. I try to come up with the good ideas and push them through, but sometimes you get a curveball and you just roll with it. The key to being in the middle of all three of these disciplines, communication. And I'll dive down into that a little bit more. So there's kind of 6 fundamental functions of product management. And what I've done is I've put the percentage of the amount of time that I actually spend on these things. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see that we're not just sitting around in conference rooms thinking about the next 5 years and strategies. Realistically, I do that 2 weeks out of the year. My boss and his boss spend a lot more time on that, but I'm more of like a tactical product manager. I just get stuff done. I ship a lot of stuff. I spend some time talking to customers about the competition, understanding their pain points. But again, it's really not that much. I do spend more time doing researching, prototyping, and testing with customers, trying to understand the problem. But you can see here, this plan, spec, develop, test. This is what I do day in and day out. This is really a big, huge part of my job. After we ship features, I analyze data, create reports, figure out how we can improve features. If we tweak a little something here, will people be happier? What should we have done if we can't make a change? So it's a lot of data analysis and reporting up. Like, was it worth spending 1 year and 20 engineers on this feature so that we can learn what to do or not to do in the future? So this is a visualization of the relative time spent in these different types of, I've called pillar of different groups of people. So if you start over here at research, we have an amazing research team at Adobe, especially on the Photoshop teams. It always starts with research. And we spend quite a lot of time hypothesizing. If we did this, what will happen? How many dollars will it bring in or renewals, et cetera? Then we design prototypes. Sometimes they're paper. Sometimes they're just screens. Sometimes they're actually working prototypes. We meet with customers, validate them before any code is written. So usually they're UX prototypers that are making these designs, which is pretty cool. Simultaneously, I will work with the dev teams to say, hey, we're thinking about this thing. They can either start writing APIs, start researching technologies, whatever it takes to visualize the feature and kind of plan for it. And then we meet with QE from the very beginning. So it's these kind of 4 bubbles that I spend a lot of my time. But all of these other pillars are also extremely important. We have a growth team at Adobe where it's product-led growth. We're doing experiments, we're planning, we're thinking about ways that we can measure. It's a very important part of our process. And then these things that I won't dive into too much, but they're your standard kind of business and marketing type functions. So I'm sure this varies company to company and even team to team, but at least it gives you an idea of the sequence and the relative amount of effort that is put in for each of these different aspects of software development. So how do I spend my time? I've anonymized this a little bit, but I have 3 Scrum teams. So the interesting part is I'm the leader, but no one reports to me. So I'm just an individual contributor, kind of doing my things. And I've got engineers in India. I have some in Minnesota and some on the West Coast. So when I say Scrum team, it's usually 4 developers, 2 QE, 1 program manager. The program manager sets up all the meetings, takes the notes, drives things in the background. And then we have an engineering manager and then myself. So each Scrum team meets every day. And it's a very short meeting, usually half hour. We go around. What did you do? Are you blocked? What did you do today? Are you blocked? And what are you going to do tomorrow? And it usually takes about 1 minute per person. And then we parking lot any longer discussions. But this is where most of the decisions are made in this half an hour meeting. So you can see in the coral color here, this is the India team. So I work some kind of weird hours. So I've got 8 to usually a 10 on Mondays. And then I got a 7 a.m. on Tuesdays, which kind of sucks, but it is what it is. And then I have my engineering syncs in the morning. But the team is awesome. I try to do it where it's 50-50. They're not up every night so that I can be kicking it. We make it so that sometimes I'm up, sometimes they're not, and vice versa, so that it's fair. So the Coral team is amazing, and it helps because it gets all the meetings out of the way when they're early. And then the other 2 teams, it's very similar. I did have a few more meetings because they have some leadership kind of calls. And these are just like the regular scheduled meetings. My calendar is actually a lot fuller than this, but I don't want to overwhelm people with all the stuff. I get like lots of random meetings too. And then the yellow is like team kind of stuff. We meet with marketing, our higher up managers. I had a customer call every other week to like 250 people that I present every other Friday. It's a lot of fun. But bottom line, it's all about planning, decision-making, and driving. That's all I do in the meetings. So it's cool because I do have space to actually get the work done. I've worked on other teams where it's just locked out, 100% meetings, and it's not that awesome. So this has a lot more balance. So currently, and I've been on this team 2 years, and it's definitely ramped up a lot more in the last year. Scrum Team 1, we have 2 features that pretty much are ongoing. So we finish one, we immediately start another one. Same with Team 2, but Team 3, we've got 5 features going. So at any time, I'm usually doing one of these 5 things. So I'm either researching customer pain points, understanding like a new feature. If my boss said, hey, I need you to do this, I got to learn it quickly, get up to speed on it. We do all the research. We do our hypotheses. And then I'm writing a lot. We write requirements. I speak to the tech team, the dev team, say, hey, can you come up with a POC? Get this tech, do this, put it here, see if it works. At the same time, I'm meeting with the designers, saying, okay, we want to do A, B, and C. Can you put together a few screens to see how it feels? And you work with your teams, come back to me in a couple weeks. We try to get customer validation right away, like within the first month. And then if all things go well and the cycle keeps going, we write some specs and get coding. So you can see here, there's 9 different projects going at one time. So you have to be really good at managing your time and staying organized. And like I said, this varies depending on how new you are at the job and what time of year it is. Summer's really slow at Adobe typically. So sometimes you ship a feature in the middle of the summer and then you wait till the fall to get started on something else. Okay, some key skills to being a product manager. And I put them in the hard skills versus the soft skills categories. I feel like the hard skills, if you're a student, you're probably learning them at school. And when I get a resume on my desk, it's like everyone has the same hard skills, more or less. I personally focus on soft skills. So once you've made the hurdle, like, yep, you know this and that, you've figured it out and go to market strategies, blah, blah, blah. It's when I meet with the person, I was like, yep, they're an amazing communicator. They're great at storytelling. They are really good at problem solving. These are the key ones, at least for my job, that if you are really good at these, you're really good at your job. The other ones are very important too, but these ones rise above. And it's no shock, but a lot of these kind of cross over into other disciplines like experience design and even quality. And I actually have in a couple slides a Venn diagram, and it shows like there are a lot of shared skills between the two disciplines, which is pretty cool. Here is a slide that kind of shows a visualization of kind of my day-to-day and what I'm doing. And you see the big ones are communication, collaboration. That's the job right there. Just like you're the orchestrator. If you don't orchestrate, things don't move forward. Things don't ship. I also spent a lot of time writing, either writing specs, updating wikis, or I'm in Jira. And then the rest of the stuff is a lot of communication that's with customers and leading. I do a lot of leadership work. It's like keeping people motivated, happy, making sure that they know what's going on, especially new people. Very overwhelming to start at Adobe, helping them, mentoring them. So and there's a lot of stuff here, but communication is definitely the most important skill. Okay, so at Adobe, there are different types of product managers. And on our team, there's only 9 product managers on the Photoshop team, which is a very small number of product managers. So we have our MBA PMs, and our team is weighted on the MBA PMs. They're very important type of role for our products. We have technical PMs at Adobe, not necessarily on Photoshop. We have 1. On my former role on Experience Platform, we had 26 PMs, and I would say 20 of them were technical PMs. They were typically computer scientists with an MBA, and they are extremely smart people, as the MBA PMs are as well. But so the technical PMs just deal with a lot of obviously technical features. I consider myself a UX PM. I focus on experience design. So I would say that the business part of the triangle that I spoke about earlier is probably a little bit more of my weaker area. So if there's any skill development, I'm trying to learn more business type skills. But the key is understand the customer pain points, research everything, research, prototype, get it in front of customers, test it, filter through all the feedback, analyze the data, make improvements, and cycle over and over until you're ready to write code. I think all of the PMs that we have on our team are good at UX. I think because I've been a designer, I can confidently say that I'm a UX PM, but I don't know if the non-MBAs would call themselves that. So I cultivated that for myself because that's what I wanted and where I wanted my career to go. We have 2 other types of PMs, and more generalists. They just ship stuff. They're really good at it. They know a little of everything. They, at least the generalists that I know, they don't really know UX. They don't know design. They lean on their design partners a lot. So there has to be a lot of trust there. And then the final category is other. So we have a PM that's focused on 18 to 22-year-olds. That's all she does is interview people, understand their behaviors, what they like, what their vision of the future is. We have PLG, product-led growth PMs, specific PMs for the audience or the target. So it's kind of a cool area to specialize in. And we have quite a few of those at Adobe. So I already talked about what UX PM is, but I think in a nutshell, I feel like it is the most reliable, fastest way to deliver quality designed software to customers. 15 years ago, where organizations were very engineering driven, there's a waterfall approach where they would code and after 6 months, they would release and then the customers got the software. That is a tough approach and it doesn't allow for a lot of iterations or improvements to the design. I think for our team, trying to get something in front of customers within a month has really helped us to understand if we're in the right direction or if we've just missed the mark. I'm not sure everyone knows Adobe Photoshop has a beta and we release it every 2 weeks. And all the stuff you developed is in there that you could test. You just need an Adobe ID. You just download it and test it. And we get a lot of feedback from this build. So that's like how this all fits in together is the validate and optimize part of the equation. It's pretty exciting to be in software right now because you can actually see your ideas come to life and make real-time adjustments, which is pretty cool. Okay, so this is probably where a lot of people are like, tell me how you did it. As I mentioned before, I got lucky, got a lucky break and got into experience design. I was at the bottom of the ladder and I climbed up until I made it to the circle guy here, which is a product you never heard of called AEM Mobile. So I was doing design work, working super closely with PMs, and I started learning from them. And the PM director at the time was like, all right, we'll give you something. See how you do it. Here's your own features. Figure it out. Get the specs done. Figure out how to develop it. Let's ship it. And I was able to do that. And I came to work and he said, you've been reorged. You're now a PM. I'm okay. But you're the PM and you're the designer. So I spent about 70% of the time designing and the other percent doing management, PM work, orchestrating, getting the work done with the devs and whatnot, which is a very hard but interesting job. I do think going from design to PM is a very cool track. And I do recommend people go that track to get their foot in the door because it's really hard when you're coming out of school to just land a PM role unless you've had some really good experience, like really good internships. And I've seen it happen. UW has an amazing program. I've talked to many of the students and they do get great jobs. So it's not impossible, but I feel like it's easier to evolve into the PM role from a design role. I've seen designers do it at Adobe before. So after I did that for a couple of years, I got reorged again into Experience Platform and I did no design work, which was tough for me. It was a very tough transition because I love to design and I didn't know what I was doing. But thankfully, I had a great mentor. And so for anyone who's out there and they're like, I don't know what I'm doing, get a mentor. Mentors will help you. So that messy reality thing is a little more of a straight line. I wish I had a mentor before 2015 because I would have shortcutted some years and gotten my goal faster. But it is what it is. I got there eventually. So I just crushed it, worked hard, learned a lot. My mentor helped me, got good projects, and that enabled me to get a job on the Photoshop teams. That is how I did it. And like I said, I see other people do it too. So I do want to mention one interesting role on the Experience Platform team, which I worked on for almost 5 years. Experience Platform is a technical business tool. Adobe has a whole business tooling side of the company that you probably never heard of. There's some really cool tools. They're marketing driven tools and analytic tools. So when I got reorged into this product, I knew nothing about this product. It was new. I didn't know about customer data platforms. I didn't really know a lot about data analytics. So I learned a lot. This role was super cool because I was a UX PM. I spent 70% of my time doing PM work, but I never owned a feature. So it took the pressure off, which was good. So because this was a technical business product, a technical PM owned the features. And on this team, the technical PMs were super like analytical and they weren't super like artistic. And so they paired us with a technical PM and our management said, hey, don't worry about the experience. Let them worry about the experience. You just worry about the technology. And so I'm in the middle of that, which was very cool. And so I worked with an experienced designer that actually did the mock-ups and whatnot, but I did the requirements for the experience, which was a very cool place to be. It was a hard job because I didn't know a lot about the technologies. I had to learn a lot, but boy, am I glad I did because these skills have come in really handy. So this team is hiring. So if you're looking for a job, you should look at this product. It's especially if you like technical kind of business software, they hire a lot of people. It's doing really well revenue wise. So they're expanding. So now I'm going to segue a little bit to experience design at Adobe. I'm sure everyone here knows what experience design is, so I won't belabor it. But specifically, I work with some really smart, awesome people. We have 9 designers on a Photoshop team that cross web, iPad, iPhone, and desktop. And it's a general pool of designers, and they kind of roam around a bit. So just depending on where the need is, they'll get assigned to a feature. Sometimes they'll come in for design discovery and jet out, and then maybe come back at the end and test things. Sometimes they're there through the whole journey. But they're definitely, I partner with them from the very beginning. Like anytime I have a feature, we're brainstorming, ideating, collaborating, figuring out what if. I call it the North Star. If we could do anything, what would we do? If there were no technical limitations, what would we do? And then we work backwards from there. We meet with the engineers and come down to earth a little on the being realistic. So from that stage, like I said before, we research, we prototype, we test, we make sure we're on the right track. And then the experienced designer definitely does the mock. We use Adobe XD. And once they do their design team iterations, they come back, they present to me. Then we do an iteration with me and the developers. And then we go back and validate one more time. And that's when they deliver specs. And they're literally like red lines. So they order up the icons, the spacing, interaction design, pretty much everything, and the accessibilities. And then that's where the devs start doing all the coding. And then they come back and they do all the testing. Not like a quality team, but they do it testing like interaction testing. So it's pretty standard at Adobe to do this. It's pretty standard to have our designers be in a pool with everyone and you just get pulled out and put on different features or different surfaces. Okay, so similar to the slide you saw earlier about product manager skill set, honestly, it's very similar. The only thing that is different is right at the top, instead of like business type skills, they're like design principles, human-centered design, UX best practices, the design tools. PMs, they don't generally know this stuff. I think I do because I came from design. UX PMs specialize in that, but it's a rare, amazing skill right at the top. But again, most people's resumes I look at, they all have these hard skills. Where it gets really cool is the soft skills. Are they good storytellers? Are they amazing communicators? Do they have empathy? Do they care about our customers? Do they care about the pain points? And then the basics. Can you deliver specs that, are actually good red lines? And can you get the icons on time and all that kind of stuff? But to me, it's the soft skills that make the difference. And I could say that all the designers on a Photoshop team have amazing soft skills. People who work in Adobe tend to stay at Adobe a long time. And it's just a great place. It's a safe space to hone your skills at communication. It's a very relaxed environment. It's not a lot of stress. People are just nice. They're very nice there. So it makes it fun and easy. It's very cordial. So the meetings are not stressful and the communication is just more relaxed. So here is the Venn diagram of the overlaps. And I feel like these skills super valuable as far as being a PM. If you understand design thinking and user research, testing, you're going to crush it. And all those PMs I know on the Photoshop team are really good at all these things, working with designs, understanding design thinking. And these are the skills that make experienced designers amazing too. So these are the ones that just bubble up as being, yep, these are top level pro skills. Okay, so 2 skills that I have been telling people. I'm a mentor on ADP lists and I meet with a lot of designers, and I get asked all the time, what can I do to either get my foot in the door, differentiate myself, or advance my career? And both of these skills are great for experienced designers, but also for product management. So that's why I included them here. So if you're in one camp or the other, these will definitely check both the boxes. The first one is accessibility. And I'll just tell a very quick story. At Adobe, we get sabbaticals. So for every 5 years of service, you get between 4 and 6 weeks off paid. And I'd gone on one of my sabbaticals and I came back and my boss said, okay, we need to make our product accessible or we're not going to get this big contract from Microsoft. So this is your feature, make it happen. And the VP was very eager to get this contract. So I didn't even know what accessibility was. And so first thing, I saw this company called WebAIM in Utah. They had this class on accessibility. So I went and I learned for 4 days. And I started diving into what is accessibility and how do I get this product to be accessible. So bottom line, you guys probably already know, but it's just making the software so it's accessible to everyone. So whether you have a long-term or short-term disability, if you're blind, you can't use your hands, you can't hear or hear very well, having your product be accessible is super important. It's also the law. So another kind of sidebar story is my husband owns a restaurant. He has a website. He was recently sued because it wasn't accessible. So he's made his website accessible since then. So it's all good, but now people are getting sued. And so now when businesses are threatened with having to pay from getting sued, they're going to pay someone to actually make it accessible because it's better and easier and cheaper. I think that anyone out there who is interested in product or in design should at least know the basics of accessibility. And there's a couple things that I'll just go over quickly. The first one is there's standards. There are US government standards. It's called WCAG. And it's a bunch of words. But there are some websites that sort of condense it down so that it is easy to like a designer's guide to accessibility. And I can just tell you off the top of my head, keyboard navigation, making sure that there's contrast. So you're not using gray on white, gray text on white backgrounds, or anything like that. There's a really specific standard for contrast. You have to order the page, so it's not just like when you tab around, it's just going all over the place. Use alt text, you can zoom, use sections, and you have a hierarchy. These are design fundamentals. And most designers already know these things. You just have to go through a checklist to make sure that they're actually coded correctly. So it can get super detailed. And the part that was tricky for me is like communicating to the developers how to make something accessible. And luckily we have an accessibility team at Adobe that I could lean on. So it wasn't only on me. But the bottom line, the project took 2.5 years. We made it, but it was a lot of work. And I actually don't know if we got the contract, but we did the right thing. So it felt good. So there's classes on LinkedIn Learning for accessibility. I actually took it because I was like, what is this thing? How good is it? And it's okay. It's a good foot in the door. It probably get you through an interview if you took that class, if you don't actually have a class at university. The second skill is soft skill, and it's storytelling. So this is a skill that I lean on every day at work. In fact, on Friday at 4:00, I got a message from the marketing team. I need a video, 1.5 minutes, that tells us about your feature, and you need to do A, B, and C. Oh, great. But it's storytelling visually. Or anytime you give a presentation, these every other week customer calls, I have to take them through a journey so that they'll pay attention and care and give me feedback. It's like the engaging way to tell a story, but there's an art to it. And a lot of people aren't very good at it. It takes a lot of practice. If you can develop this skill, you're going to be in a very good position to be very successful, either as an experienced designer or product manager, and you're going to do awesome on an interview. I think the number one thing I see, people get nervous. They talk super fast. They just want to get through the presentation. Pacing's terrible. They know their audience and they have way too many visuals. And so I actually, this might be an unpopular opinion, but I like to have 5 images or less in my presentation. That's usually an hour long. If I'm like trying to pitch a feature to my boss or show it to a customer. Any more than that, people are just like overwhelmed and they can't deal. Storytelling, super important. It's great for jobs. Any opportunity you can get to do public speaking, this is going to help your storytelling. Be less nervous, just be a little more comfortable pacing yourself and whatnot. So it's the one thing in an interview, if someone can't do it, usually a no. Because there's too much of the job that's about storytelling. Okay, do a quick time check. Pretty good. Okay, so a few examples. Okay, so I use my UX and design skills every single day at work. I primarily use my skills for communication. And I do that because people remember when you have a good picture or when you have an organized, designed like wiki. They'll stay longer and they'll remember. I'm known for my wiki designs and it's served me really well because now everyone thinks that my stuff is really organized. And it's always good to have good reputation. I also use my visual skills to talk about really complicated things and try to make them seem a lot more simple. And that's because I'm trying to get people to stay with me through the talk. And if I blast them full of details from the beginning and I don't progressively introduce them to concepts, then you lose people. And if you lose them, they're just not going to support you. It's the bottom line. And I think the third thing is just about, again, storytelling. I do it with pictures. I try to simply show what a problem is and then offer a solution. So I never go to my boss and say, oh, I think this is a problem. I say, this is a problem and here's what I think a good start for a solution. And you do that with pictures. It's the fastest, easiest way to do that. Okay. So I divided up internal communications, external communications. So internally, pictures everywhere. People are visual. They remember the pictures. So when I'm writing requirements, we use Wiki instead of Adobe. I do a 2-column format. Everyone can read 2 columns. It's a no-brainer. If you go to a wiki that's a wall of text, that's one long column of run-on sentences, nobody's going to read it. So I create a wiki. I have visuals. I have all the requirements there. I have all the links to other things, videos, and then I just very sequentially walk through it with engineers. It doesn't have to look perfect, but if it's well organized, people will read it. And I have page tracking on all my wikis. I get a lot of traffic. So I know people are coming and they keep coming back. So I know that they are getting used. That's one. I also put together a lot of reports. We're a very data-driven organization. And so we put together visualizations. I do this every month. We have lots of different tools that have wearable visualizations. So oftentimes I'll make up my own. Now it takes time because they actually get looked at. I look for anomalies and trends. So using those kind of skills are super, super helpful. This is a big one. And it's a little bit tricky because I have design skills. I can mock up anything, but that doesn't mean I should always. We have a design partners. They do the mocks. But early in the process, when I need to pitch something to my boss and show him the scope of the work, I will mock it up. And it's usually 1 or 2 screens, a 5 at the most. I'm like, here at a high level, here's how I think it'll work. Not a lot of details. The UI could totally change. I don't really care, but I'm just hitting the big points. Yes, it'll have this graph. Yes, it'll have a table. It can do X, Y, and Z. But I call them PM comps. They're just like high level buy-in. And sometimes I'll take this to the engineering team and I'll say, here's what we're thinking. Go off and think about how we might code this. What components should we need? How would we do the information architecture? So I do this quite a lot, do these PM comps, because they also help me think through the requirements. So they do double duty. And these are definitely internal. And then there's the external communications. Whenever I have to demo to those 200 people every other Friday, it's a little nerve-wracking because they're all like top level Photoshop influencers. Like you've probably been to their websites and seen them all over TikTok and Instagram. So like they know the product probably better than I do. And so I don't want to make mistakes. And I put together these videos and do walkthroughs to help show them a new feature and just have it ready and we'll post it on a forum for them to give feedback. And then all the LinkedIn crap. Hey, my feature came out, come check it out, blah, blah, blah. Social media, blogs, all that kind of stuff in the forums. So there's a lot of external communication actually. This weekend, I'm spending time doing a video for the next release we have for a couple features, never ends. So having some skills creating videos is actually a pretty cool skill because I make a lot of videos. The next one for the designers out there, you probably have worked around personas. So this is for Experience Cloud and Experience Platforms. There was like 6 primary personas, and then we had to develop these walkthroughs. So when I partnered with the technical PM, I'd have to figure out how all the back end worked and all this stuff. And then I always started here. And I would meet with that technical PM, say, okay, they land here, they go here, they do this, then they go here and they do that. And that's the UI. And they're like, yeah, that makes sense. And then I would go to our design partner and say, okay, here's the general flow. Here are the general UX requirements. And that's enough to get them going. And so every single thing I did had one of these. Who's it for? What's the primary action? What are the services? And and kind of stick with it. So this was a very critical part of my work on Experience Platform. We don't really use this for Photoshop though. Our workflows are a lot simpler and definitely not so technical. But for technical products, this is definitely the way to go. A couple more slides. So infographics. So this relates more to experience platforms. We had really technical backend and the flow of data and trying to get like a clear answer, like by reading a long, boring, wordy wiki. I had no idea. Like, what is this thing? What is it doing? What are you proposing? And so I would put a picture to all the words. So I would summarize about 3,000 words in this one graphic. And then we could get more complex. Okay, so now we can have one source with multiple flows that do these jobs, that do this thing, and blah, blah, blah. So having this was so much easier than trying to have my designers read the with needs and everyone try to figure out what this guy was trying to say. The picture, I was like, just look at the picture. It's right and it works. So go there. And this last picture, I think was interesting. This one took 2 months to pull together from a huge assortment of products. Once I came up with this graphic, this is 2 years worth of work for about 20 engineers that all came down to this. And going to each team and figuring out, okay, does this thing go here? And does this relate to this and that? It was a lot of work and worth it. And I left the team before we followed through with this. And I don't know whatever happened, but like even just one picture can explode out a bunch of work because each one of the circles was a team of probably 5 engineers. So I think without having a visualization, it would have been a lot harder to sell this idea. So I used that to do our concept accept. And that's it. Feel like I've talked a whole lot very fast. So if you want to contact me, find me on ADP List or on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect with anyone. And I hope you found this helpful. So, that's it.
Yeah, that was really insightful and really great. Thank you so much, Amy. We do have a couple questions in the Q&A
Sure.
section. If you want to go ahead and address those.
Okay. Let me pop that open.
Hold on.
Wow, there's 40.
A couple of them are from earlier workshops. I think the earliest one for this one is at 2:12.
Okay. I can't pop it open. Can you read one to me? Would that be possible?
Yes. Sure. So the first one we have is PM more stressful hands-on compared to product design. What are the major changes / shifts?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I'll be honest. It's definitely more stressful in a different way. So I think the primary thing is the buck stops with you. So when I'm in a meeting, everyone's looking at me for the decision. And thankfully, I have gotten out of the habit of trying to make a decision really fast with everyone staring at me. And I said, I'll get back to you within an hour. So it gives me a little bit of time. I think the leadership aspect is definitely a little bit more pressure. But with the extra pressure, there's more reward. I think financially, there's more of a reward. I think the pay scale is a little bit higher on product, if that's a motivation for anyone. If you make a bad decisions and you send out something to customers that's not that great or is embarrassing, that's stressful. And I think some of the deadlines can be a little stressful. Like I mentioned before, I got that Friday at 4:00. Oh yeah, do a video this weekend. I'm like, great, booked up, but yeah, I'll get it done. I could say no, but I just didn't want to in that case. But yeah, so trying to juggle it all is hard. You just have more work, but that could change job to job, company to company, just from my perspective.
For sure. We have another question regarding whether stakeholder management is qualified to be a soft skill and something that you look for in candidates.
Stakeholder, say it again.
Stakeholder management.
I put that in the leadership bucket. I think the biggest thing I see when I'm speaking to people on ADP lists, so they're 20 somethings looking to be PMs, they don't have a lot of experience yet. And they go into, I'm trying to visualize them in a meeting with people like myself that are 50s. And it's hard, like their stakeholders, like it's a leadership position, but you're younger. And so I don't know. That's a tough one. I don't know if I'm answering that question right, but
No, it's all good. Yeah.
yeah.
We have time for one more question. This one's, how do you balance business versus user needs?
Yeah, that's the hardest part of the job for sure. 100% hardest part of the job. I could spend an hour talking about that because to me, it's the golden triangle of quality, shipping something on time, and just meeting the business needs. And something has to give. And it pains me to send something out with bugs. Sometimes I can fix it later, but yeah, that one's super, super hard. And that's where the experience comes in. I've been doing this for a long time and kind of can make the call on, the business is more important than this bug, or we don't have enough people, so we have to cut this thing, so it's not going to be as good. That's the challenge of the job for sure.
That's all the time that we have for today. Once again, I'd like to thank you for coming out and giving this talk. It was really insightful and really great.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for the opportunity.
Hey, where you going? If you enjoyed today's talk by Amy, go ahead, comment down below your thoughts, give us a thumbs up, do subscribe. You want to listen to more talks and workshops? Definitely follow us on Instagram and join a Discord server. You can even attend them live then, because we put out a special registration links right there. And if you want to give us a little bit of support and help us in organizing more such events, go ahead and check out our merch on redbubble.com. The links to follow us, to get all the event announcements, and to see our merch, all in the event description. I'll see you next time. Take care. Cheers.